Today, I'm introducing someone who has been a pillar in the energy industry over the past 30 years. Chris Wright is the CEO and chairman of the board of Liberty Energy. Chris is a lifetime energy nerd and energy entrepreneur with a passion for the role energy plays in bettering human lives. Chris serves as executive chairman of Liberty Resources, and from 2000 to 2006, Chris served as chairman of Stroud Energy. And all the way back in 1992, Chris founded Pinnacle Technologies, where he served as CEO from 1992 to 2006. Chris serves on multiple boards, including the Federal Reserve Bank Denver branch, and he received a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from MIT, and he also conducted graduate work in electrical engineering at MIT and UC Berkeley. So ACC, please join me in welcoming the esteemed Chris Wright to the stage.
Appreciate it. Thrilled to be here, to be in a room, a bunch of young, smart, passionate people. The future, our future, is truly energizing. I'm different. I always say I'm this weird, quirky, nerdy guy. I'm going to say some stuff, and you're going to think, what the hell? I'm going to take questions at the end here. I'll be around. Come up, and bother me. And believe it or not, I was a young, passionate college person one day myself as well. A couple other things I'll say just to give a little bit of context about what sort of formed my directions or focus in life. When I was 12 years old, the only time I ever went to where my dad worked, I went downtown in Denver and I saw a homeless person on the street. There was a lot less homeless then. I didn't know anything about substance abuse or mental illness. I just couldn't believe there was someone without a roof over their head and secure food to eat. That really rocked my world. 12 years old, young kid. And so poverty became an obsession of mine from then to this day. Besides work and family, that's the focus. And my wife joins me in this passion. First, it was to understand what caused poverty. It was only later I learned, like everybody was poor everywhere and always. The question is what got people out of poverty and what's going on there. And I won't go into that, but my quick summary from my travels or whatever was institutions, culture, education, and energy. So all four of those things I am quite passionate about. The other thing was I was a skier growing up. My wife was as well. My wife was a professional ski racer. And my brother and I were skiers, maybe early backcountry skiers, mountain climbers. We'd climb mountains and ski down them. So I loved the outdoors from a relatively young age. I'm a longtime board member of an environmental group called PERC, Property and Environment Research Center. Right along the spirit of this group, a free market, property right, environmental focused group. So that's sort of the setting. The other thing was when I was in high school, there was sort of a widespread mania then that the world was running out of resources. We're not just running out of oil and gas and coal, but we're running out of farmland and fertilizer. So there was sort of a doomsday pessimism. And a professor I went to high school in Denver, Colorado. A professor from CU Boulder came down and said, we don't know if it's 1995 or 2000 or 2005, but industrial civilization will start to decline and then it will collapse. And people will be poorer, world population will shrink, and tough things are coming. It was the centerpiece of it was energy. So that drove me as a young kid to say, I want to work in energy. That's the problem, is we're running out of the energy resources we have today. I want to work on resources of the future. I went to MIT specifically because they had two of these called Max, which is like, think of a big, badass magnets on it. I think my mic is going in and out. I hope audio quality is not too bad. I went there to work on fusion energy. That's what powers the sun and all of the stars. This seemed like a near limitless source of energy, and certainly it could be the problem, part of the solution to the problem facing us. I'm still passionate about fusion energy. Humans are ingenious. It will come. I also learned in the meantime that fission energy, the other and easier form of nuclear energy, it has enormous resources and can go a long way. I'm less fussed about seeing fusion energy arrive because we already have fission. And we have next generation small modular reactors coming out this decade. So in any case, energy has been my thing. I worked in solar energy in graduate school. I worked in geothermal energy after graduate school. I was going to be an energy transition guy. And I never would have guessed at that time that I've spent most all of my career and most of my time and efforts on oil and gas. The company I run today that I founded 12 years ago, Liberty Energy, we frack more than 15% of all the wells drilled in the US and Canada. So I often introduce myself at college campuses as an evil fracker. That's my career. That's my profession. Yeah. Oh, should I switch? Okay. Yeah, hopefully the mic will work. I don't know. Something I'm doing wrong. But in any case, I want to talk about history and just context setting for where we are today, and then end with some comments about energy and climate change and where we are. But in my view, two things changed the world dramatically, and all just in the last 4, 5, 6, 7 generations. And that's the rise of human liberty, bottom-up social organization. I know that unites everyone in this room. And the arrival of a wildly different source of energy that was much larger in abundance, much higher in quality, much lower in cost, which is hydrocarbons. The world had been 100% renewable energy throughout all human history, dominantly wood. In fact, wood was the largest global source of energy till about 1900 when coal passed it. But the arrival of hydrocarbons just exploded the amount of energy available, and not just in quantity, but in quality. High temperature burning heat. So you can build cement, you can make steel in larger quantities than people could before. You can make fertilizers and plastics. These two things together, human liberty and hydrocarbons, over just the last 150 years, have more than doubled human life expectancy. Reduced the amount of people living in poverty from 90%, 200 years ago, 90% of the population lived on less than $2 a day in today's money. Today, that's 9%. So we went from almost everyone deathly poor, destitution, I call it, where you're not sure where your next meal's coming from, you're smaller, you've been in some state of starvation throughout all your life. That was the normal human condition. Today, it's 9%, so it's rare. The people in this room don't see it much. But that's still 700 million people living in that condition. So these two things, the rise of bottom-up social organization and hydrocarbons, led this change. And both of those forces, both of those catalysts that enable everything else, planes, trains, and automobiles, the internet, Google, Amazon, all of these things are enabled by these two factors. And both of those factors, human liberty and hydrocarbon, or really just more broadly staying, low-cost, affordable energy, are at significant risk today, greater risk than in my lifetime. That risk has been growing. I think the stakes are high. This is a challenge I've dedicated my life to, and I will dedicate the rest of my life to. But the solution to that challenge is in this room. It's you. It's all of you. It's this next generation that understand the role of human liberty, human freedom, voluntary association that leads to business and entrepreneurship and improvement, and that we need to lift people out of poverty, or at least not put roadblocks in the way of their rise out of poverty. What we've done to date from the political front on climate change, which has mostly been in the United States and Western Europe, the main impacts of them has been to reduce choices, mandate massive expenditures, and raise the cost of energy. This is not a winning formula. And of course, it's not a formula that will spread around the world. Developing nations or middle-income countries, they're not going to adopt the expensive, unreliable energy and slowing of exporting of energy-intensive industries outside their countries. They're not going to do it. We're not building a model the world is going to follow. But the crowd in this room, we can build that model. We can find how do we develop energy sources with lower carbon intensity. We shrink gas footprint, but still deliver low-cost, affordable energy that can finish the energy transition we're in. Let me talk a little bit historically about energy transitions. As I see it, the world has really gone through three. We're still finishing the third. The first was the arrival of fire. That's about 1 million years ago. So we know very little about it, but it turns out it was enormously important for our species. We evolved larger brains, greater mental capacity, but small, sort of insufficient digestive systems compared to most of the other animals that live in the East African plain. The grasses that were prevalent, the foliage in the trees that most animals could eat and liberate their calories from, humans couldn't. We don't have a long enough digestive tract to break down those very long carbohydrate chains and liberate the energy from it. We needed fire to cook and break down these complex carbohydrates into more digestible format for humans. We could eat fruits and nuts and other things, but our food source by the arrival of fire. Also, because of our geometries, we're made to go long distances, so we have a great cooling system. We don't have fur, we have high surface area to body mass, and we expel heat easily. But cold, even in the tropics, is a problem for humans. Fire solved 2 of these problems. Jumping ahead 990,000 years to about 10,000 years ago, we had another tremendous energy revolution, which is the arrival of agriculture, which independently arrived at least 5 different societies around the world, probably more. Agriculture exploded our ability to produce food. Food is the energy that powers the human machine. It is just energy, but it's energy suitable for human consumption. By creating so much more energy, so much more food available, led to an explosion in the human population, led to written language and culture and arts and cities, settled societies, not nomadic hunter-gatherers. So enormous changes in the human condition, but it didn't change the well-being of the average person, the common man or common woman, as we can say. Life expectancy was about 30 years before the invention of agriculture. Human life expectancy at birth was about 30 years after the invention of agriculture. We created a small upper class, kings, queens, royalty, aristocracy, could live off the fruits of the agriculture of others, but 90% of were food producers, were in caloric deprivation, so they were 6, 7, 8 inches shorter than we are today because they didn't have enough food to eat. Napoleon, famous for being short, was actually far taller than the average Frenchman of his time at 5'3". He was far taller, but he was short compared to the aristocracy, compared to the small percent of the French population that had more than enough food to eat and grew to their genetic potentials. So agriculture changed our world, but it didn't lead to our modern world. It didn't lead to today's 72 years life expectancy at birth, people flying from all over the country to come gather together and share a passion to solve a problem, make friendships, build networks, came from the arrival of hydrocarbons. And first it was peat, and then it was coal. Those were the 2 first hydrocarbons that changed the game. I used to give talks 20 years ago and say the arrival of human liberty came first. Think of starting from Magna Carta, the Glorious Revolution, the American Revolution, are these progress in human political freedom. Economic and social freedom for humans only came later. Even in this country in 1840, if we wanted to start a company, we needed a majority approval of a state legislature to give us a corporate charter, which means limited liability. If our business fails, I'm not going to debt or prison. These economic reforms, in Britain it was called the Registration Act, in the United States they were called general incorporation laws. These things changed the game. These allowed economic freedom and growth and activity. And so my view was humans that are free, well, you can't build a hotel like this or travel across the country with only wood as an energy source. They found a better energy source, and the causality worked that way. The more I've looked into that, and if you study the history of the Industrial Revolution in England, and this flourishing in the early 1600s in the Dutch Republic, the Dutch Golden Age. Dutch Golden Age is famous for those awesomely beautiful wooden windmills, but they didn't provide a lot of energy. They helped pump some water and sometimes ground some grain, but 20 times more energy in the early 1600s in the Dutch Republic came from burning peat, which is like immature coal. It's just buried biologic matter that's piled up. A few feet, tens of feet underground, it's dug up and burnt. When the Dutch really realized, hey, we can use peat to get high temperature process heat, we can make ceramics, we can make better farming tools, we can make vases and art and things that can be traded and transported. This tiny little country became the wealthiest country in the world, developed a global trading empire and a huge navy and a powerful country that had been small and in actually 100 years, 150 years before was quite poor, became the wealthiest nation on the world. And what happens when people become wealthier? When they're less worried about their next meal or a roof over their head, you get social progress. You get the start of property rights. You get freedom. You get more, at least more respect towards women and changing social roles in societies. In England, it was coal. Now, peat didn't last very long, and ultimately the Dutch went from their pinnacle and on a relative scale fell down because England was developing a different energy source, coal. And I didn't realize till maybe 5 or 10 years ago, coal was over 50% of total English United Kingdom energy when Queen Elizabeth, the time of Shakespeare. This is incredible how early coal rose. So maybe it's not a coincidence that the societies that first got high energy sources and therefore higher wealth were also the societies where the start of bottom socialization first made its progress, where the social structure started to change, the places where slavery ended, and the United Kingdom, just simply tremendous credit there. Not only did they outlaw slavery in the places they ruled, they took a third of their military power to stop the slave trade across the oceans of the world 200 years ago. That's what wealth brings. And so I don't know if it's liberty arrived and then better energy sources were developed. Others argue exactly the opposite. It was the arrival of better energy sources that enabled this growth in human freedom. There's a great book called Foragers, Farmers, and Fossil Fuels by a classicist at Stanford, arguing it was energy that was the driver and liberty that was the result. I think there was interplay going both ways. Two things together played just a tremendous role in our societies. And people today take them for granted. People don't understand if you shift to top-down control, if you don't allow freedom to want to cook or source your products the way you want to source them, you're going to stop innovation. You're going to stop the growth in human well-being. I want to also talk about this. So this third energy transition, the arrival of fossil fuels, although I'm all for it, I've spent years and I'm still today working on other energy sources. I have no history in the oil industry. I don't own any mineral rights. I'm in the business because it's what works today. I am back in the nuclear business. I'm in the geothermal business. I want to see the world more widely energized. And my caution there to people in this room, or to think about balancing these factors, is we still have a third of humanity, 2.5 billion people, that cook their daily meals burning wood, dung, and agricultural waste indoor in huts. I've traveled to 55 countries. If you go to Africa or South Asia or rural areas of Latin America, this is how people cook their meals and heat their homes. That indoor pollution, sleeping in these huts, we think it's romantic when we go away and you have a smoky fire for a little bit. That's kind of neat. But if you live with that every day, all day long, this kills about 3 million people a year. 3 million people a year. About the same death rate as we had for COVID over the last 3 years. Except these 3 million people are all very low-income people. They're just, unfortunately, not politically relevant. We shut the world down for 3 million people dying when it's skewed to older people in wealthier countries. But This is a huge problem, and there's a simple solution. The main graduation fuel from that is just a propane cook stove. A simple burner, canister of propane, lasts 2 weeks. It also liberates over an hour a day for women. Women do almost all the physical work in traditional societies. And they spend over an hour a day just gathering fuel wood to burn. If you've got a stove and you can just turn it on and light the match, it is time liberation, it's higher quality air indoors, it's dramatic change of the health, particularly of women and children who are around those fires all the time. We are launching a Bettering Human Lives Foundation to go support entrepreneurs that are already trying to develop these businesses, first in Kenya, but we will spread that around. Not just in this country, about 5 billion people, 4 to 5 billion people, well more than half of the global population, wear clothes that were washed by hand. They don't have washing machines in the homes that they live in. That is an incredibly time-intensive. If you've camped, if you spent a month out camping, or backpacked, and you wash your clothes, you wear stinky clothes a lot because it's a chore to hand wash your clothes. Over half of humanity, that's every day, all day. That's how they do it. They want energy. They want a washing machine. In our own country here in the United States, over 10% of our population received a utility disconnection notice in the last 12 months. When we make energy more expensive, we make it harder for low-income people to satisfy their basic needs, to heat their home. What's the biggest cost of food? Energy, right? The energy to power tractors, energy to make fertilizer, energy to move it to market, energy to power distribution. So I'm all for, in fact, as he said, I've been a lifelong environmentalist. Climate change is a real problem. I've been speaking on it for 20 years. And we can make progress with that. But we can't make progress towards solving a climate challenge if we're keeping people in poverty and not letting them rise up, because no society in the long run will pursue that policy. One of the things I saw at the Congress of the Parties in Glasgow, the Global Climate Conference, 19 wealthy nations pledged no longer to provide any financial support to fossil fuel infrastructure in developing countries. 2.5 billion people don't have clean cooking fuel, and the politically connected wealthy ban governments from helping those 2.5 billion people live longer, healthier lives. That's not just ignorant or bad policy. To me, it's to the point of immoral. I'm not for any of that. What have been the biggest sources of decarbonization so far? By far and away, natural gas, right? Over 60% of US reduction in greenhouse gases have been natural gas displacing coal in our power stack. Coal was by far our biggest source of electricity. Today, that's natural gas. I hear from politicians, hey, shouldn't we do that overseas? Shouldn't we close down those Asian coal plants and send them American gas? Well, I'm in that business. I think we will see that evolution. But if you're going to close down a coal plant in Vietnam and make them get natural gas, if it's produced locally, you can have low-cost natural gas. If it's produced in the United States, it's super cooled and shipped across the ocean and delivered, you're going to dramatically raise their cost of electricity. You're going to cut greenhouse gas emissions in half, but is that a good trade-off if you're increasing the price of electricity by 50 to 100%? It isn't for everyone. Everything has to be balanced in trade-offs. The Paris Climate Accords. Am I blanking on his name? We had a Nobel Prize winning economist from Yale. He got his Nobel Prize for climate economics. He analyzed the Paris Climate Accords. What was the bottom line view? And of course, this economic work continues on to this day. You know, it's investing $100 trillion to avoid $15 trillion of climate losses. Well, we saved $15 trillion potential damages from climate change. But we spent $100 trillion. To me, that's an $85 trillion human impoverishment program. Setting a goal, net zero emissions will happen in 2050, that's not a rational goal. The goal should be We want productive investments so that we can invest $100 in attacking climate change and reap hundreds of dollars of benefits. Planting trees, better energy technologies, efficiencies. There's all sorts of great things, and I know people in this room are going to invent and drive more. Like, it's an enormous challenge, but we need to solve that challenge with innovation, with voluntary cooperation, bottom-up social organization. And when we enforce things on people, let's make sure we've done our math, we understand our trade-offs, and we're not investing $1 for a dime's worth of benefit. That's not a winning strategy. And of course, it won't happen in the long run. It won't happen in the long run. But change comes from motivated, smart, passionate people who care about doing good, not looking good. And when I look around this room, that's the feeling I have. You've traveled around the country to come here because you believe passionately in a cleaner environment for the US and for the world, and for getting in front of a growing climate challenge. And you understand that the way to do it is through networking, through innovation, through markets, through property rights. I am all in favor of that goal. God bless you all for that passion.
Thank you.
Appreciate it so much. I'll stay around. I don't want to keep anyone in this room longer. I'm happy to continue to talk and all that, but so impressive to see an organization started just a few years ago, now spread nationally, now drawing in the right kind of people that are going to drive positive change through freedom and innovation. Thrilled to be your partner and glad to be here tonight. See you.